So I'm Pepe Costa, country manager of FBM in the Philippines. And before anything else, I would like to thank the entire AGB team for putting up such a great and prestigious event year after year. And 2025 was no different. So congratulations to all of you. Although I hate being on stage, I was tasked with making these two gentlemen talk. It's going to be an easy task. It's going to be an easy task with Evan, but let's see what I'm going to be able to extract from Ricky. When we talk about OGs, and we're not talking about oldies, no? So the original gangsters or pioneers of gaming and iGaming industry, we're talking about companies that have been around for more than 20 years. FIWeb, DFNN, FBM. But please don't worry. We are not going to talk about stuff that happened 20 years ago. No matter how big your cup of coffee was this morning, I'm sure we would be able to put everybody to sleep. You know? So that's not the intention. As you guys know, while iGaming in the Philippines had its foundations back in the early 2000s, it wasn't until after pandemic that we saw a significant change in the regulatory shift. The pandemic forced a rapid digital transformation across all industries, and obviously, with gaming was no exception. With physical gaming venues closed or restricted, I'm not sure some of you might remember, we had some lockdowns for 2 months, but some of the venues were closed for 3, 6, even a year, depending on which LGU they belong. So there was definitely a surge in online gambling activity, including a rise in unregulated operators targeting Filipino players. Soon after, PAGCOR recognized the growing challenge and responded by strengthening regulations and licensing frameworks on online gaming. That's what I like to call the modernization of PAGCOR. And the reforms implemented were just, until now, they're just so astonishing. That's why our hall today is full. The goal was to ensure that Filipino players had access to safe, legal, and properly regulated platforms, rather than being drawn into unlicensed offshore websites with little or no player protection at all, or no regulatory oversight, and obviously no taxes being collected. So the shift created an opportunity for established brands, like in the case of FBM, in the case of FIWeb, DFNN, which had a strong presence in the regulated gaming industry for many years, to expand into digital platforms while maintaining compliance with PAGCOR's evolving guidelines. But that was not only for the existing players. Not only the existing players benefited from a well-regulated market. All of a sudden, the market became an attractive environment for newcomers. That's where we have Evan as a representative of CasinoPlus. And here we are today in one of the most dynamic and modern gaming markets in the world. So we will just discuss a little bit of the evolution of iGaming, focusing on the post-pandemic era, the role of newcomers like CasinoPlus, BingoPlus, and what's next for all of us in this industry. So, gentlemen, would you like to add some of the key drivers on the rise of iGaming in the Philippines on the post-pandemic era?
Good morning, everyone, again. Thank you for inviting me over as a last-minute replacement for Ramon, our chairman. But essentially, I guess if you go back, not 20 years ago, the iGaming, or what people then referred to the regulator as RGPs when it was first launched as remote gaming platforms, we were our subsidiary was the first to actually launch it in the country 5 years ago. In fact, I was telling both Ivan and Pepe that we will be 5 years this November. The first commercial bet online in the country was in 11/11/2020 during the pandemic. We always believe that environment-wise and ecosystem-wise, the Philippines was very well positioned for the gaming environment, gaming as a form of entertainment for the Filipinos. And if you look at that ecosystem, which continues to grow until now, key components of the ecosystem were in place then. The Philippines then, as it is now, is probably number one, almost top in the world, in highest number of hours spent online. Would you believe Filipinos spend almost 9 hours online, literally 1/3 of their day? About 6 hours of that is spent online on mobile phones. We also had a massive take-up of emerging payment service providers or e-wallets. Then, maybe accelerated by the pandemic, but even until now, with over 80% of the country actually has one e-wallet on their phones. The cost of the telecommunications infrastructure, getting data is now down to 90 pesos for maybe a week's of data, and so on, prepaid. So all of these, and the cost of devices were low. So we had felt then that the Philippines was really in a ecosystem that would be very supportive of an iGaming environment. And we see that continuing until now. We are number one in the world in Facebook. I don't know if we should be proud of it, guys, but anyway, we always believe that that ecosystem continues to grow. And it's really incumbent on all of us in the industry, especially us, to be able to work with all the key players of that ecosystem, from the regulator, from the telco, and from the government agencies, policing all the transactions and so on, to be able to work with them. It has evolved, but we feel that it will continue to grow, and that ecosystem will continue to support growth for iGaming in the Philippines. We believed it then, and we continue to believe it until now.
There's a very similar story to us. When the government was first looking at how they could bring the land-based operators online, that was an important time within the history of the Philippines, because that was the seed. They knew they wanted to have an established land-based where that it created jobs, it was part of the community, and it would drive tax. So once they started looking at those types of licenses, we knew it was the time to enter the market in the Philippines. And they initiated, I think it was 3 licenses that they gave out for remote gaming initially. RGPs. Yes. And then once that happened, we hit the market, we acquired our land-based casino, and then focused mainly online. A large driver of that was, of course, the super apps, the GCash, Maya. That was a great tool, especially during the pandemic. Everyone rushed into those apps as a main payment option. And those apps have evolved over time. What you're probably going to see as well, last December, the EMI licenses were kind of opened up. There was a freeze on EMI licenses, so that's going to be the next driver, I think, of these super apps having more competitors in the local market. It's going to be tough, but that's where we see this going.
Perhaps that will be also to create a competitive environment among the super apps, would definitely lower cost. I think for the entire iGaming industry, that would be important. Not sure if you guys agree with that. But going back to what Ricky mentioned, that so InstaWin was the first one to receive an online bet in the country. Back in 20...
Auspicious date, we chose 11/11/2020.
2020, back in 2020. And ever since, how did DFNN contributed to the development of the online gaming and the regulations that have been evolving since then? We have gone a long way.
Yes, again, I will go back to working with the ecosystem, with the regulators and with everyone. And I think at that time, we had to provide literally almost real-time feedback on all the protocols or guidelines that, on the regulatory framework that was in place. Remember, this was at that time, I think we were the only ones in Asia or this part of the world who had it. So what we had to do was we had to provide literally real-time feedback on what were maybe some probable issues, because at the end of the day, all of us here in this room want to provide that best gaming/entertainment experience to our players. We had to maintain, of course, strict KYC guidelines. Some processes then were a little tough to implement, especially the mandatory two-way video call, which Pepe, by the way, had to do, and he had to tell our guy then that I'm in the middle of an effing meeting, so don't call me now. Of course, he didn't say it like that. He said it nicely. But again, what was important for us is that we continue to adapt and evolve, and without really jeopardizing or causing any risk or any issues with regards to the regulatory framework, which means KYC, ensuring 21 years old, and providing feedback, of course, at that particular time to the payment service providers. Ivan was mentioning that was the only way, in fact, during that time, 2020-21, most of you may not know that the Philippines had the longest lockdown in the world. We had the longest lockdown in the entire world during COVID. We had people that literally had met someone, they got married during COVID, had a kid already and everything, and that's the only time the grandparents saw the kid after the pandemic. That's how long it was. So we had to work very closely with the ecosystem players, with telcos, especially with GCash then at that time, to develop that, what is now evolved into GLife, or the mini program application into GLife, being one of the first to actually have implemented that. So again, what was key then was we had to provide that feedback, Pepe, to the regulator, to GCash, and say, about your limits and everything, because remember at that time, GCash was, or the other payment service providers, was simply a transactional, a transaction to purchase something. You purchase something, you buy something, food, burger delivered to me. So it was not the cycle of gaming that they were supporting at that time. So, but of course, moving forward now to where we are, we could see that that real-time input and working very closely, and I will continue to say it, with the key ecosystem players and stakeholders was very key at that time. So now, of course, a lot of it is seamless. You have ensuring data privacy, data security, VAPT testing, all had evolved into what the current framework is now to get your games or your platform online. So I think during that time, maybe you can add to that on some of those developmental challenges then.
Well, CasinoPlus came in just a little bit after that. Maybe you can discuss a little bit the challenges you encountered with the initial regulations when you came in, and the challenges in converting the players from the land-based to an online platform.
So I think that during that time, again, hat tipped off to Padcore. They really did a great job with working with us, understanding how we saw the market and what needed to change in order for the market to continue to grow. And so there were situations in which maybe Padcore is divided by land-based and online, and you're trying to introduce a product that is both land-based and online. So there's a little bit of a gray space there of, well, who do we speak to? Where do the taxes go? One of those issues was with our online slots and online table games that are physically in the casino and that are going online. We saw that as an opportunity at the time to invest in these unique products that were not on the market, and we could actually decrease our taxes by having them in the physical land-based environment and then pushing them online. So that was a little bit of a unique selling point for CasinoPlus. Since then, Padcore has continued to decrease the amount of tax for the electronic games, which is a great driver of course, the taxes coming in, and a lot of online players enjoy those electronic slots, and so you're seeing that as a main driver. But we invested early, and the markets are continuing to change, and as they should. And that was, I think, one of the difficulties that we faced, but we overcame them through assistance through Padcore.
We all know that the policies and guidelines have evolved in the past 4 years, no? But a big part of it was also the reduction on the regulatory fees. Would you also consider that as a driver for the booming of the iGaming industry in the country? And what do you guys expect for the next few years?
I think it is. One made us more, besides, of course, on the profit side, but being able to maybe be a little bit more competitive versus the unregulated space. I think that was a key driver, being able to use that and again, put it into a lot of the platform and maybe marketing enhancements and campaigns. I think for us, definitely yes. But I think besides that also was really looking at, and that had been evolved, and Van was mentioning it, that Padcore had really taken a look and was very receptive into being able to adapt to the changes in the environment. And I think that was very important. Just on the player KYC, for example, they immediately said, okay, no, we'll try to relax it without, of course, impeding into the regulatory guidelines on age, for example, and doing properly the KYC and working, of course, very closely with all the providers now. But that one, yes. Plus the other maybe amendments or changes that they were able to implement through those 5 years. I think that had helped us a lot.
So I think also they were very open to new game styles. So for us, color game was something that didn't exist on the market. So how do you get GLI certification on that? How do you actually go live when the category of gaming doesn't exist? And that's when Padcore came up with specialty games. And that, I think, opened up the market to all these new style of games that you're seeing out there, marble games and things that are not traditionally a gambling game, but entertaining. And I think that was an important part too.
If I may add, I think Padcore had also realized that it's not a one-size-fits-all, and we realized it, that the games that were popular on our land-based casinos throughout the country were not exactly the same games that were patronized or what we're looking for. You had mentioned something very important, that PAGCOR had allowed local type of games, and some of these games were very, I don't know, Filipinized in nature. And that, I think, was very key to cater to that market online, while maybe the traditional, because we also have land-based e-casinos throughout the country, are catering to different set of games and different set of players. So that was key. So I agree. I think the additional content that were more localized and having a particular, like they call it, specialty games, or a sort of classification had helped us likewise.
And looking a little bit forward to the iGaming industry in the Philippines, and we heard from Chairman Tenko yesterday that the best is yet to come. You know? And some peers, some folks in the industry are saying that the regulated market is still about 65% only in the Philippines. So we still have 35% ready for expansion. You know? What do you guys think is what can we expect in terms of, for example, the role of payment channels, e-wallets, for this next few years? How can we work together with these super apps, and what can we expect for the next 2 years?
Sure. So that maybe a quick review. So the unregulated market here traditionally has been about 70%. There have been some statistics that it's now 65% because essentially those illegal markets, illegal operators are converting into PICO licenses and becoming fully regulated. I think it's been a smart play by the government here to not come in too heavy-handed in terms of just shutting down the illegals immediately. What they did is they wanted to show the way, show that the regulated market, you can generate more or equal to more than what you're doing in the unregulated market. And then after that, it was a tightening of the payments. And once payments are cut off, of course, things start to change. And I know the statistic has been 65. Others are saying it's more, if you speak to the largest illegals in the market, they'll say the market is more 50-50 right now. So they're coming on board at a faster rate. And what you're going to see this year is a lot of those local gray sites launching in the local market as a regulated entity. And that's going to cause a whole new round of competition, which will probably proceed all the way through, I would say, this year, with a shakeout period occurring next year. So there's going to be a lot of rising costs, whether it's on advertising, billboards, on these super apps. It's going to be a competitive year, but it's going to drive a lot of revenue. And that's what we're here for.
Agree. We did see it at about 60-65% on the regulated space. But you were mentioning something which was key moving forward, which is to continue to look at that key component, which are the payment platforms. And you mentioned the payment platforms. I mean, for the Philippines, it still is probably king, right? Because a lot of Filipinos, I'm sure maybe similar to other countries, are unbanked. So essentially, the purchase method is essentially that wallet, and that more popular one. I am not advertising them, starting with a G, right? In fact, if all the foreigners here, if you visit some of our beaches, You would go to a little restaurant and they would say they accept cash and GCash. So that it shows you how much of a literally embedded currency that is for us. And it's the same online, right? When it has led to the growth of really e-commerce here in the Philippines. And I think that is a key component. We have to continue working with them moving forward. Of course, there are a lot of maybe risks in moving into that space, and maybe we can talk about that later, but we still see that will be a key component. In fact, that is the first thing that you have to do for all these new players that are coming in. Of course, they get the content ready and try to have some of that localized content that Ivan was mentioning. But the first thing that they will do is get to those local payment platforms, and there are several, right? Popular ones, and Filipinos usually have 2 or 3, and they use a couple, 2 or 3, depending on the limits that they get, their transaction limits every month, right? So that, for me, is something very, very critical. And everyone who looks at the market will see that the PSPs, payment service providers or e-wallet providers, will play a key role really in the growth for iGaming for this space.
And think about with these new competitors coming on board, and you're talking about new platforms, keep an eye open on Viber. They're coming out with their own payment system. And so there's going to be some interesting developments there. Then, as you said, Philippines loves Facebook. And can you imagine a world if Facebook were to get their own EMI license and do their own payments? It's going to be a game changer.
Yeah,
Definitely.
For those of you who are wondering, the Philippines is probably a little different from, especially if you're talking about ASEAN. Viber here is #1. I mean, almost everyone here is on Viber. If you go to the other countries, most of them are on WhatsApp and in ASEAN. And that's why I think that's very key, because Viber had just, have they launched it here? About to, right? Or have they?
You can actually go onto Viber right now, and through their bot system, you can deploy your games through Viber, but it's very difficult to find. So they need to work on their UI, that overall customer journey. But once they've implemented the payment method, then you're going to be looking at next step is the mini app store.
Yep. In fact, I was about to say that it's so, I don't know, ingrained here that even just 30 minutes ago when I met an old friend and he said, "Oh, well, nice seeing you and everything. Okay, just Viber me." So it's no longer just text me or call me.
It became a verb.
Yeah, pare, just Viber me. So that's how, I guess, ingrained Viber is into literally our daily lives. And you're right. That will be also maybe a game changer when they have Viber Pay. Yeah.
That would be. Since we still have a few minutes, one last topic, and we know that we have a positive, looking forward vision for the iGaming industry for the next few years. But let's talk a little bit about responsible gaming. I think it's a topic that we must tackle, especially with the number of online platforms consistently growing. Some of them not yet operational, but soon to be. How can we envision responsible gaming initiatives for our online environment?
It's a good question. Actually, yeah, with new entrants to the market, you have to think, I think for the established players in the market, they have a lot more at risk, and they're coming from a different background. But these new entrants to the market are more familiar with ways around doing things. So whether it's spamming of text or those kind of things. So I think there's always a ethical way to market, and then working with providers that can help you even do a first round or so of KYC. So that's I would say that's one of the key drivers of working with these companies like Maya, Gcash, is because they have very strict rules of getting their players or getting their customers online. And then when you're integrating your product into that, you've already done a first round KYC, and then you're doing a second round of KYC. So we see our best customers coming from those clean channels. And from an operator perspective, if you don't want to deal with so much of fraud and whatnot, that's where your players are going to come from.
I agree. I think from a integration viewpoint, it does give us an initial KYC step before they are actually passed on. In fact, they only pass on to our platforms what they call verified accounts. So that's one. And they only pass on to our platform 21 years and above. So they check birth dates. That's where they only pass on to our platforms. For those of us who are integrated through the mini app or mini programs into those platforms. So I think that helps. We have, of course, seen a strengthening of responsible gaming messaging and the narratives, but we have seen that. We will continue to do that. As you expand and touch into all these 90 plus million Filipinos, or maybe 21 years old is about, I don't know, 50, 60 million, who are on these e-wallets, we probably would, for our social responsibility and to espouse responsible gaming, should try to constantly reach out to them, all the keep it fun messaging that we have always been trying to do, that this is really, for Filipinos, one of the best forms of entertainment that's out there. And that messaging is, I think we have been trying to strengthen, the regulator, PAGCOR, has been trying to strengthen. And the payment platforms also, in a way, ensure that, certain limits, there are limits that are put in place. We can even impose those limits as far as transfers to the wallet and so on. A lot of these filters can be put in place likewise as part of our responsible gaming or social responsibility of us, the providers, Pepe. So.
Yeah, I really think that it's a key component to guarantee a sustainable growth over the years, and that gives peace to the government that that the entire system, the entire ecosystem, is something that it's safe, so they can collect the taxes in a safe manner, so responsible gaming, I really think that we really
definitely
need to
a
focus
safe
on that.
and secure environment is something that we definitely should be providing to each and every player.